welcome Michelle Pippin to the Positively Joy podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, I'm so excited. We could finally make our schedules connect. I'm really pumped to be on your podcast and hopefully connect with some of your viewers.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And I think this is I probably say this all the time. I think this is an interesting point of view that we're going to share today. When we talk about divorce, a lot of times we talk about just the divorce story itself and just kind of getting over, but there's a bigger piece to your life before, during, and after a breakup. And it's, yes, a lot of it is the feelings, but it's more than that. Sometimes it's finances, sometimes it's what you do with your life. And so we're going to focus on a little bit more that way today, which I think is very important, because to be honest, I think it all affects how you feel and how you feel about yourself. So you are an entrepreneur who actually found entrepreneurship in marriage, but we're going to talk about finding entrepreneurship kind of on the other side of divorce, or maybe through the divorce. So again, I just thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you, as far as like divorce goes, marriage and divorce, right? So I've got two daughters and a son, but both my daughters are married. And finances are a big part of life, right? And taught my girls, it's like, I want you to desperately want your man. I want you to desperately want him. I do not want you to need him, right? And so finances are a huge part. And for me, I work with women entrepreneurs. And I tell you though, it's really just a vehicle. The business is just a vehicle to empowerment for women. It's really hard to truly be empowered in your life if you can't fund your own life, if you've got to be dependent on a benevolent husband or government or whatever, right? Like, so it's really it's a life-changing thing to be able to count on yourself for your financial needs.
Absolutely. And many people, not just women, have, divorced or not, have found themselves laid off and just trying to figure out what to do. So yeah, so I think there's layers and layers, I think, of this. And yes, it does affect the divorced woman, the separated woman, but in lots of different reasons. So we're going to get started. And I want to talk a little bit about kind of your background and kind of how you got to where you are today, and then we'll jump into it.
Yeah. So, as you know, as an entrepreneur, I kind of came into it accidentally. My oldest daughter is 27 years old. So, if you can remember the world 27 years ago, like not everyone had email, let alone social media of any sort. And no one like worked from home, right, back then. But I was pretty desperate to be able to be home with my kids, my growing family full time. And I also knew I had to create a full time income. And so back then, I remember just taking this giant leap of faith that I could like somehow cobble together an income from home, right? I didn't know anyone who worked from home. You heard like rumors of it back then, but I really had that desire, and like the desire to be with my kids full time is what overrode like any fear. And when I quit my job, I'm married then and now to a public school teacher. I took $50, so a quarter of my life savings,
Hmm.
and I started my business 27 years ago. And back then, like my first go, I made $67,000 that first year, which more than replaced my income. And I did it as an at home secretary because the term virtual assistant hadn't been created yet, right?
Yeah.
And I went from then, I had like an HR business with a partner, which I loved. It made a lot of money, hated doing the work. I was young and impulsive, I guess. And so I shut that business down and I tried my hand at life coaching. I'm excellent at marketing. So I got found out to be a crappy life coach really fast, right? Like, because I'm
Okay.
not a very, I'm an excellent business strategist, but a life coach, I am just not that person. Then I went into business consulting and did some one-on-one work for a long time. And then when demand was more than I could handle, I did group work. And that's when Women Who Wow was born. So around 2012. And yeah, so it's just been evolving from there, but focused on using entrepreneurship as a vehicle to help women live the lives that they imagine.
Let me point out something. And you just talked about, use the word evolution. Let me point out that you discovered what worked for you and what didn't, what you loved and what you didn't like. Maybe you weren't the best life coach because you weren't you didn't tell yourself, "Hey, I shouldn't be doing this," but
That's right.
you discovered that. You looked inward. And so do you talk about that with the women that your clients today?
I do not as much as I used to. I tend, honestly, I focus more on like the tactical, like how to get these women seen by the right people, because there's so much noise about social media and like like you're like posing for the algorithm and trying to catch the trending audio, and I hate that. It breaks my heart to see driven, accomplished women playing that game. So I
Mhm.
focus more on the tactical stuff, but we always, the inner looking inward stuff always comes out, right? No matter how tactical that I try to be, because if we don't feel a certain way, if our emotions are like lying to us, then our actions will follow our emotions, right? And
Yeah.
that's a dangerous. It's a the Bible says that the heart is deceitful above all things, right? Like that's a dangerous track to get on. So I try for it not to come up but it always does, because it really is about the whole woman.
And obviously you just mentioned, the Bible verse, so you're a woman of faith. And I'm sure you have lots of different kinds of clients, but do you work with Christian entrepreneurs who may have the issue, and I will raise my hand right now, the issue of, "Oh, I feel guilty about trying to make money for God," that type of thing. Is that a thing, or is it just me?
Well, I will tell you. So I'm a Christian woman who runs an online business, right? Like
Mhm.
so I work with women of all different backgrounds and all different faiths. I do like one thing I have never done, and I joke about doing it, but I work with a lot of people who actually they don't even have a Bible. Right. And because my analogies are faith forward and my life, like just my life view is faith forward, I get a lot of people who will say, I don't have a Bible. Which one do you recommend? Now, I have stopped short
Mm.
of like monetizing that Amazon Amazon link, right? But just barely. But the truth is, right? The Bible has a lot to say about not just money, right? You hear a lot of preachers say the Bible talks about money, and it does. But the Bible also talks about finding enjoyment in your work is a gift from God. The Bible talks about wearing your armor to succeed, right? There's so much that the Bible talks about with regards to success. And so to me, if you are running a there is no such thing as a Christian business, right? Like the business can't go to heaven or not go to heaven, right? You're a Christian woman and you run a business. And so to me, it's like standing firm with the value that you provide your clients or your patients or whomever you work with, like we've got to we've got to hold the line, right? Because we are meant to be what the world looks at and they say, what does she have? And that isn't just confidence or an inner glow or whatever, right? Like she finds success. Where is it in the Bible where it says, you'll be blessed in your coming and in your going. You'll be blessed in the city and blessed in the country, right? Like it was David that the Bible says, and he was more successful than anyone before him because God was with him, right?
Mhm.
And so to me, it's like this is part of what we do to represent the Lord. And so the same way we want our standard of excellence to in our with our health, with our homes, right? Like we should have a standard of excellence, and that, if you're in business, should apply to your business, right?
Okay. I want to talk a little bit more about your business, but before we do, I want to talk about something that we said we were going to chat about today. That is how your identity, in a lot of different ways, but after a breakup, after a divorce, can change, and how that identity may turn into something that you weren't before. Perhaps it's an entrepreneur. And I read an article, and I don't know if it's true at all, but it said divorce sparks entrepreneurship. So I don't know if that's right at all, but I do think it's interesting to realize that your life is changing. Your identity, the way you feel about yourself, the way you look at yourself, could certainly be changing. And perhaps you are now looking at your job, or maybe you didn't have a job and you're divorced now and you have to, this, like you said, you have to make some money, and how that identity leads you to what you're going to do to support your family, the family that you are with after the divorce and the breakup. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I see this a lot. I don't love, I know divorce is terribly painful for people. I've never been through it myself. I've watched my brother go through it twice. It is, identity is a huge shift there. Finances are a huge shift there. And in entrepreneurship, both of those intersect, right? So to me, I think that for anybody going through that and, your identity is rocked as I imagine it can be. The only thing I can relate it to is I did lose my brother and my only sibling in May of 2022. A huge role that I've played my entire life is that of sister, big sister,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And so for a little bit there, I wrestled with God. I'm like, God, like I'm a sister, right? Like, am I, like to go to from being a sister to not rocked my freaking world, like rocked my world. And, really God ministered to me. And I'm still my brother's sister, right? I'm bereaved, granted, but I am still his sister. And I will go to my grave being his sister. And so, with an identity shift that is as huge as divorce, the only thing that I feel like the only wisdom that I can share is go to God, right? To help you rewrite your identity anchored in Him instead of a role that is I never imagined, I never imagined really burying my brother, right? Like I kind of thought that was like an anchored in, even if I wanted to get rid of him, I couldn't. It's a role that's so anchored in. So I would really, just tell your viewers, like go inward, ask God to help you define, rewrite where necessary your identity. I would imagine that quote is very true, that divorce sparks entrepreneurship, right? Anytime, whether you're divorced, married, single, whatever it is, being an entrepreneur is going to test your identity. It's a crash course in like self-development. So, be prepared for that. Enjoy the journey and anchor your identity in God, because that part will never change.
Yeah, yeah. I love what I do. Possibly Joy Ministries certainly came from God. Now I still work full time, so I can't sadly devote my whole life to this, and that will come one day. But I will say that even when you think you're following what he's given you to do, he can change. He can
That's
pivot
right.
you. And I've talked about this on the show before, but this podcast has been around since May of 2020, right in the middle of COVID, where the Lord said, I want you to talk about joy and help people find what real joy is. So, okay, been doing that for years, right? And then in the end of 2024, I just keep getting nudged. Talk about your divorce, talk about your divorce. And I didn't want to really go there. I didn't want to talk about my divorce. But it's important to be obedient to God's will. And I said, okay, well, we're gonna talk about it. So we pivoted this show. So even though the show has existed, we still can come to him and he can lead us and guide us in whatever that business is going to be. And so said, okay, so since then, since November 2024, we have been talking to women and counselors and people who have interesting things to say about breakups, divorce, and grief. So you mentioned your brother, and I have to say, whenever the Lord tells me to do something, I just jump in, right? Typically don't do as much research as I should. I'm like, okay, Lord, we're going to do it, right? And so I have found that this whole grief piece of it, widows who are grieving a marriage themselves. They're not
That's right.
divorced, but there's wisdom they have to tell us. And so your example of grief, I think, is very on point. I lost my sister in December of 2024. So yeah, I mean, not really that long after the pivot. And she was my big sister, and she was my only sister.
Wow.
My only sibling. I have no
That's
other siblings.
wow.
So
That's a
that's a
difference
huge.
right there.
Yes, that's an identity shift, absolutely. I mean, I'm not a sister anymore, I'm not a little sister anymore. In my life, another identity shift was when I was married. The man I was married to after the marriage tells me, "Hey, I don't want to have kids," which was not the deal. And so that's an identity shift. Like, okay, well, and I don't want to bring a child into a relationship where one parent doesn't want children.
That's right.
So I basically said, okay, well, I'm just going to have to deal with that. So now that's an identity shift. I'm not going to be a mother. I'm going to be a woman on this earth that's not a mother. So what am I supposed to do? What am I here for? So yes, when things happen in your lives, definitely changes your identity and you have to figure it out, but you have to bring it to God. 100%. Absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about wow. So the women that come to you, they're interested in starting businesses. Some are divorced, some are not. Let's talk about exactly what you do for them.
Yeah, so they typically don't come when they're starting. They typically come, and I blame myself for that, honestly, because typically they find other courses first, right? Like that are going to have them spend like 4 months branding and do, all this stuff and make everything pretty, and then they go to market and it's crickets, right? So people typically find me a little bit later down the road.
Hmm.
They've had a little bit of success, so enough to keep them going, right? Like, and
Yeah.
not maybe financially, but hope wise, they know their business has some potential, and they come to me to figure out that money piece, right? A lot of people quit their business not because they are burnt out necessarily. They quit because they never financially got their ground under them, right? So they never, broke their first six figures, hired a first employee, even part-time. And there's a lot of, help out there that is actually leading people down the wrong path, and out there in the
What
world,
do you
it's,
mean by that?
well, so we have come under the belief system in America, where the job where someone else signs your paycheck is viewed as more secure than the paycheck you sign yourself, right? And
Hmm.
you think
Yeah.
about that. Like, it's like, well, this is real. This is secure. John Smith signs my paycheck. So that seems real. But if I go on my own, then all of a sudden things feel wonky. But I just want to offer the audience, like, back before the Industrial Revolution in America, nearly all of us were self employed. There was no welfare system. So failure meant starvation and homeless, right? And yet, all of us were self employed. The failure rate was non existent, right? Now we might be doing horseshoes and whatever, but so then we start getting jobs and, industrial revolution. All of a sudden, the job is more secure. We don't bet on ourselves
Yeah.
anymore. And then, so now you fast forward, and there's this entrepreneurial like industry, this business development industry.
Hmm.
And the longer it goes on, the harder business seems. Why? Because they're giving you advice that keeps you busy and broke. And I don't know about anybody else, but like I can be broke on the beach somewhere. I do not need to be busy to be broke. I don't, right? And so it's like if you are in business for yourself, make sure you like lock in the financial piece. And that's very simple. What are you exchanging for money, right? Like what are your offers? Don't be coy. Do not think you need a certain number of followers on social media. Do not think that we don't think that you have to get anything viral. Don't think that you've got to waste your time there, right? So for instance, for me, I am on social media. I like to share pictures of my grandkids there. That's a fun time, but I don't depend on it as lead gen, right? I would much rather show up quietly in a couple industry journals where I'm sharing my expertise and people are coming to me and saying, can you work with people like me, right? I'd rather step on stages that are not like the huge and I've had huge stages. I've been on Good Morning America. I've been on the bigger shows. I host a mini event in New York City every year, right? Like I have access to anybody you want to have access to. I don't use it because there's things that build your ego and things that build your bank account. And when you're starting out, you got to build that bank account. What are you
Hmm.
selling? For what cost? How many do you need to sell in order to make your bills, right? When I first started, like it was dire straits. We had $213 in savings, zero credit cards because we had ruined our credit in college, and we had a mortgage, student loan debt, right? And when I got nervous about money, it wasn't because I wasn't going to be able to fund a retirement. It wasn't because I needed a new pair of Jimmy Choos, right? It was because like my power, I had already made a payment extension for, right? That's where it was when I began. So keep it simple. Don't listen to the experts because they are telling you things, a lot of them, that make them money. They don't make you money, right? So focus on, selling. I build myself as an at-home secretary, made $67,000 27 years ago, right? I'm a horrible secretary and I was still able to do it. Anybody can do what I've done. Keep it simple. Stay focused on talking to people, not just the masses on social media. Talk to people who can pay you for what you do. Ask them to pay you for what you do and start making that exchange.
Wow. Okay. A couple of questions. So, for people who, let's say they have a job and, it's fine. They like their job. They're separated or they're getting a divorce. They're going through this process. And let's say they have children. So they begin to think about, is the full time job at this point in my life? going to be where I need to be to take care of my family. When do you make the decision to quit the full-time job? And I'm not talking about myself here. I actually love what I do. I'm a journalist and full-time journalist, and I believe that
Oh my
in th
God.
in this time and age that we're in, I mean, I was in academia before, and I actually came back to full-time journalism. Trust me, people thought I was crazy, but I think it's important work that I do. So I love what I do.
Yes.
So I'm not really talking about me necessarily, although at some point we all have to come to that conclusion. When do you make the jump? So when you're working with your folks, when do you make the jump? Because you can't do it all if you are
No.
working full time.
And my hat's off to you working full time. I quit just on a wing and a prayer, with no backup plan and no safety net and nothing. And I honestly feel like that's the easiest thing to do. I don't say that very often because I don't want to get sued, right? But like it is like I recently, so what we lost my brother, and then around the year mark of after losing him, so May of 2023, my parents hit a wall, like an emotional wall. It wasn't like a psychotic break, it wasn't a nervous breakdown, but emotionally, they really couldn't go much further in their current setup. And they run a construction company. They own a construction company.
Oh, wow.
So I said, my business is really, I've built over time a lifestyle business, right? So everything, it's not a heavy lift. I love it. But I said, I will take over the construction company and I will build it so we can sell it. And then I'll sell it and then I'll come back to just doing. So I've lived this life for 2 years. Well, 2.5 years. We sold in June of 2025, right? So I got my parents a multi seven
Congratulations.
figure. Thank you. It was a multi seven figure exit. I was proud of it. I'm very, very glad to be done. So hats off to you because that is very difficult to try to live those two lives. When you add on being a wife, or being a mother, being a sister, being a daughter of bereaved parents, can feel impossible. So my hat's off to anybody doing that. To me, you know, everybody's different, right? You want to see like what is your threshold? Like if you can make say $5,000 one month, is that going to encourage you enough to bet on yourself, right? Everything's a risk, right?
Mhm.
Everything's a risk. So, you've got to set your number goal. Do not say, well, when I am fully replacing my full-time income, because when you're doing both, you're double-minded a little bit, right? You're split. So I would set a goal and I would just, go for it. You can always find another job, what I'm saying, if you have to. So whether that's a number that you want to have in savings or a number you
Mhm.
want to hit from your entrepreneurial, I'd probably recommend that. I would recommend that you say, okay, if I make $2,000 a month, in any month, then I'm going to put in my notice. Cause if I make two, I can make four if I double my time, something like that. I would go that.
Okay. A lot of the women I find who listen to the show, um, are women of faith, and they may have a little hustle on the side, right?
Yeah.
A lot of it is faith-based. So, but and I think a lot of women wonder, well, I just could never. I mean, this is never gonna make money. A faith-based because I do what I do. The reason why I'm still doing it is because God told me to do this. And I love talking to people like you, so I'm gonna do it. But when we're talking about business, that's a different thing. Now, yes, can God make your business successful? Of course he can. But I think we sometimes question what kind of business it is. And can one is one industry inherently more successful than the other? Faith-based businesses can't be as successful as whatever. Is that something we should get wrapped up in, or should we just focus on, I guess, what we know how to do, what our passion is, what we want to do, and then just go from there?
So if I can just be frank, right?
Yes.
There's a woman right now, selling flatulence in a jar, and she makes $10,000 a month, proven income. She
Wait,
is,
wait, hold on for a second. Did I hear you correctly?
yes, I don't know how else to put that. She is putting into a jar and she is
Okay.
selling that, right? There's other women who are selling their socks that they sweat in and do all that. Like there's so many things to make a living. I am exposed to a lot of different businesses, right? So faith-based circles, faith-based business coaching. I have a little, I'm never quite sure about that. And I'll tell you the reason why is because if Jesus is our key to salvation, right? If
Absolutely.
Jesus was the key to success in business, then all the successful business owners would be Christ followers, and everybody who's not a Christ follower would be struggling in business. And that is not the case,
That
right?
is true. Yep.
And so, God blesses what we bring him, right? And in a lot of the miracles in the Bible, you know, whether it was a prophet like Elijah or whether it was Jesus walking the earth, it was, what do we have? What do you have? Whether
Mm,
it was, well, I've got a couple fish and a couple loaves, or I've
mhm.
got an empty bottle of oil, right? Or just enough oil to make this bread. Like, it was always like, what do you have? Right. So to me, it's not like, God, will you make my business successful? It's like, Lord, will you bless my work, right? There's a lot in the Bible that says God will bless the work of your hands, not the idea of your head, right? The work
Mhm.
of your hands, right? God is, talks about, the plans of the diligent will prosper. Diligent in that the way it's used in the Bible is decided, decisive. Okay, I am a Christ follower, right? Like, I have my, what do you call, like, fire insurance, right? But I want to live I want to live as an example, as a daughter of the King. I want some people to see there's something apart from me. Yes, I want to claim supernatural favor over my business, and I do. And doors open for me. Like, I am a countrified, small town girl, does not like to travel. I'm a half a step above a hermit, all jokes aside, right? Like, I am the least likely business leader ever. And I am running organizations. I'll stack my profit against nearly any name that you know. I can reach nearly any name that you know. I've been doing it a long time, but it's like, I am here, but for the grace of God. But it is
Mhm.
not because I'm saved. That's a whole different issue. It's
Mhm.
because I work with kingdom principles, right? I'm actually going to be publishing a book called, it's 21 biblical strategies for modern day success. And
Mhm.
anyway, if anybody messages me, I'll just give you the book. It was a program that I sold a while back. It's like using these biblical principles and applying it to your business to create that success. The blueprint's there, but it goes beyond just, I'm saved, God bless my business.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. My goodness. Okay. I'm looking at the clock. Boy, we there's so much to talk about, and we're running low on time. Let me talk about women who wow. So exactly what is it, and how can people find out if it's for them?
Yeah, so Women Who Wow, it has recently kind of morphed for the first time since our inception. So people are starting to refer to it as the visibility gym. And that's because I have really, like, I drilled down in those 2 years when I was, running my business, running my parents' business, building it up, working with brokers, all that stuff. Like, my business kept growing. And when I broke down why it kept growing, why leads kept coming in, it was because of the infrastructure I've built in my business to be seen, right? So again, I do not depend on social media for lead generation. It's noisy, it's crowded.
Yeah, it
There's
is.
not a lot of truth there. There's zero authority there. So I prefer to be, I have a couple business columns in traditional business outlets that I write for. I'm syndicated through national outlets. These are things that I built deliberately. They are not high ego gains. I have a few print newsletters that I'm in. So people like in different industries like legal, therapy, therapists, like they pay for newsletters and I show up in that newsletter every month. So they're paying attention. So I choose this, like what I call surround sound visibility. And that's now what I'm working on with WOW. And it's just helping these women become increasingly independent of the algorithms or ad budgets or what have you. So some people come because ads have changed, right? And they might have a crazy successful business, but their ad budget has been 20,000 and now they want 40,000, or it might be somebody's like, hey, I want to make a real go of this. Like, I want to make my first $10,000 month. So like people come at both angles, but the solution is the same for both of them. It is, content and visibility as infrastructure to your business so that you're seen by the right people and seen in the right role, right? Like, I don't want to be seen as a pop-up blocker that people are swatting down. You know what I'm saying? I want to be seen as a welcome guest, as an authority figure when I come in and when I'm talking. And so that's what I do. Like, every month we have a visibility code in Women Who Wow. So last month was pretty straightforward. It's 3 podcasts in 30 days. And then this month is called the Pitch Me Press. And it's like this crazy as a fox kind of strategy that I've used where you design a strategy where your ideal clients are pitching you. It literally changes the flow of your inbox, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
your email box where, typically like we're pressing follow up. Did you forget to pay me? Did you want to pay me but you forgot? Did you want to hire
Mm-hmm.
me but maybe you got amnesia and you didn't pay me? Whatever, right? Like instead of
Yeah.
doing all that, instead of all the follow up, they're coming to you. And
Yeah.
so the Pitch Me Press is one I'm super excited about, but it's something that will change the flow. And so I'm always looking for different visibility codes that are straightforward, very, very simple, can be implemented with or without a team, with no budget, and that gets the right people, i.e., the people who need and want what you have and can afford to pay it. I'm seeing you on a regular basis.
Okay. There are people listening and watching who they are just either they're just coming out of this situation or they've been living with it for a while, but it's still tough. I mean, they doubt themselves. Let's talk about doubt for a minute. If I can't make a marriage work, how am I going to make a multi-figure business work? What do you say to them?
Oh my gosh. Well, I will tell you. No, number one, the the marriage depends on that second person, right? If you're smart, the business can only depend on you. Right? But I will tell you, that's the part that breaks my heart about business. I don't, if somebody loses money, I'm not going to cry myself to sleep over that. But what does keep me up is that self doubt that creeps in, right? That self doubt that creeps in. And for people dating, I just saw a post today where somebody said, hey, man, like I'm dating and, I'm being ghosted and it hurts, and it's like
Mhm.
it causes me to self doubt. So the truth is, whether you're in a divorce and that's causing some self doubt, you're dating and that's causing self doubt, you're struggling in your business and that's causing self doubt, right? Like, then the truth is, you're open to doubting yourself, man. It's just the triggers are, you know what I'm saying? Like, we've got to be firm. I have a program called Naked, and it is all about like mental toughness for the Christ follower woman, right? It is something that we've got to anchor in because when the waves come, and it's when and not if, whether it is relational, friendship, marriage, extended family, financial, health wise, right? Like we should have a stronger core as Christ followers than people outside. And so, whatever's causing you the self-doubt, we've got to fix the fact that when things go wrong, we always want to look to ourselves, but when we doubt ourselves, that's something we can fix.
So good. So good. Michelle, thank you so much. I normally ask, so where can people find you on social media? Maybe that's
Yeah.
not the right question for you. So
Well, I'm
how
there. I'm there.
yeah,
Uh, I just
how can
don't,
people find you and where would they interact with you?
yeah, you can go to Facebook. I'm on Facebook. It's facebook.com/BM Pippin. B is in Barbara, Pippin. And that's my personal page. You can follow me there. That's where I do share like new content there. That's just where my team takes it and puts it where else it's gonna go. You can message me on Facebook if you want to talk one-on-one. It's m.me/women who wow. So you can message me there. Definitely let me know that you want the book, the 21 Biblical Secrets for Modern Day Success. And I would just there's no opt-in page or anything. Then I'll just shoot it over to you. And you can always email me too, bmichellepippin@gmail.com. Pretty simple.
That is great. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. I really appreciate you being on the show today. I think that there's a lot of women who are listening today. If they're not ready yet for their business or if they're in the middle of it and want to move to the next level, got a lot out of it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.